Welcome to the 43rd Mill Valley Film Festival. My name is Mark Fishkin. I'm the founder and director of the Mill Valley Film Festival. Today's program is a Mill Valley Film Festival conversation, and its focus is the trial of the Chicago 7. We are presenting the Mill Valley Film Festival Award for the brilliant ensemble of this piece. This film is directed by Aaron Sorkin, who's no stranger to the Mill Valley Film Festival. His feature film directorial debut, Molly's Game, played at Mill Valley in 2017, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back. I've been thinking about what makes a great ensemble piece. Certainly, it must have a great script. And who better than Aaron Sorkin to write a script about 1968? With his finesse and his brilliance with dialogue, it would attract any great actor. Secondly, no matter how big or small the part is, the actor has to be fully authentic in terms of his performance. And that is certainly the case with the trial of the Chicago 7. I think a factor that is really important that I've recognized throughout the years is that when you see a performance and you cannot imagine anyone else playing that piece in a film, that is a brilliant performance. It's rare to see that happen in any film, and it's even rarer when you have an ensemble piece where every character, again, no matter how big or small the role, makes you feel that way. So it's with great pleasure and an honor for me to present the Mill Valley Film Festival Award to the wonderful actors of The Trial of Chicago 7 and its director, Aaron Sorkin.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mill Valley Film Festival. And it's the ever-ready bunny of film festivals. And tonight we are really privileged to have Aaron Sorkin and the entire cast of The Trial of the Chicago 7. Those of you who are my age may remember the Chicago 7. I, for my part, know I'm getting older when you start seeing movies about your friends. I want to thank, first of all, I want to congratulate everyone on winning the Ensemble Award of the festival. And I want to thank the directors, Mark Fishkin and Zoe Elton, for just having kept this little pristine festival alive and well and vigorous for all these years. Because many of you may not know exactly what the Chicago riots were about, I'd like to start with a short clip and show everyone kind of the milieu. So why don't we run it?
Are they about to conquer Spain?
This is it. It's time.
We're not rushing the police.
Tom doesn't want anyone hurt.
We've got to turn this crowd around. There's too much momentum. We've got to turn them around and calm them down.
What are we doing here?
He's right. This is not safe. I know something about this, okay?
Marshals, turn them around and slow them down. It's like the Alamo back here. Turn them around and bring them safely back to the park.
We should be marching right up to them.
I don't think they're gonna surrender, man. Keep it moving. Dave and I are gonna stay and make Tom's bail.
Back to the park.
I don't carry money. Do you?
I do. I'm a grown man.
So before we do anything, I'd like to introduce the cast. We're joined by the scriptwriter and director, Aaron Sorkin. Sacha Baron Cohen as Abby Hoffman. Eddie Redmayne as Tom Hayden. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II as Bobby Seale. Jeremy Strong as Jerry Rubin. And before I say anything else, as someone who knew all of these people personally, I want to assure the audience that these guys have channeled those people. It's uncanny. I've never seen a biopic where I actually believed the people represented were the actors. And in this case, I could actually remember my friends and believe everything. So let me start with Aaron, because you chose the subject and you wrote the script. And there's obviously an uncanny synchronicity between the riots of that time and this time. And I'm wondering if that was what attracted you or why you chose to dive in here.
No, I was invited to dive in here 14 years ago. In 2006, Steven Spielberg asked me to come over to his house on a Saturday morning. And he said that he wanted me to write a movie about the Chicago 7 and that crazy conspiracy trial that followed. And I said yes right away, but I was saying yes to Steven Spielberg the way literally anyone would. So my initial attraction to this was Steven, and it was a good story. I just thought there was a chance for me to write a good movie here. Even by Hollywood standards, it's taken a long time for the film to get made for a number of reasons, but now I feel like it was worth it. We've kind of been on this collision course the film has with history, with events, and what really got it going, what kind of woke it up out of its slumber, was that Donald Trump was holding rallies and getting nostalgic about the old days when we'd carry that guy out of here on a stretcher, and I'd like to punch him right in the face, and beat the crap out of him, and cops, don't be gentle with them. Protest was being demonized. Athletes kneeling during the national anthem, suddenly they were un-American. Suddenly there were members of Congress being told to go back to their own countries. And it was, the film suddenly was feeling like more than, gee, it's a good movie, this would be a good story to tell. Suddenly it became relevant.
So one other thing really struck me, which was, aside from the outlines of the plot, you managed to get the central ambiguities of Tom Hayden and Sasha and
Abby.
There we go. Yeah. And Abby.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'd like to know how you did that. And then I'm going to ask the actors how they fared with that.
Sure. Well, there's plenty of research available, a dozen or so good books, as well as a 21,000-page trial transcript. But what I wouldn't have been able to get from any of those things was what I got from spending time with Hayden. Tom passed away 4 years ago now, but he was alive back when I started this. And just spending time with him, I was able to get an insight into not just Tom, but the others as well, and particularly the tension between Tom and Abby. And by the way, I'll try to say this in a way that isn't a spoiler for anyone in your audience who may not have seen this the film yet. But what I also got from Tom that I wouldn't have been able to get from any of the written material was OUR, our. The fact that he meant to say, if our blood is going to flow. And that's a, if you're a screenwriter, that's just a fantastic secret to have in your pocket to release at just the right time.
So let me start with Sasha. Aaron actually met Tom Hayden. So he had a guide, and he obviously gave you the architecture, the armature for these characters, but you found the guy. You found all the contradictory characters, his seriousness, his depth, his sarcasm, his irony, his courage. And I'm interested in how the three of you, Jeremy and Edward, did that. So start with you.
I think we all have different approaches. My interest in Abby started 28 years ago when I was a student in university studying Jews who were involved in the Black Civil Rights Movement. And Abby was one of the kind of Jewish radicals who went down to the South to ensure that Black people could vote, which is actually, believe it or not, still a crucial issue in the next couple of weeks. So we need actually Abby's, and we need people to mobilize now to ensure that people's democratic rights are not taken away. So I was fascinated with students like Abby, and I'd come across him then. And, when it came to actually preparing the role, my thing was just trying to see as much as I could. So trying to get as much video as I could. And Aaron was very insistent that there should not be an imitation or an impression of these characters. This was a painting, not a photograph. And that was actually really liberating for us. But I felt I needed to know as much about him as I could before I chose to jettison some bits or adopt them. And so that was really just trying to get as much video footage as possible, seeing how he walked. And also there was, what I found quite interesting was I'd be interested to see if you felt the same thing. There was an intentional affectation in that his aim was to influence people and to influence that group of young people who could potentially be mobilized against the war in Vietnam. And the more I read, he actually grew his hair, and his appearance was with the ultimate aim of bringing those people into the movement. And so, yeah, it was just, trying to get hold of footage. I managed to get hold of some speeches that were recorded on the radio from some archives here in LA. And yes, that was it. I mean, it was quite terrifying because firstly, it was the first American accent I've ever had to do. And his one is so particular. We were worried that it could be potentially annoying over the course of 90 minutes there.
So Eddie, I'd like to hear.
Fascinating.
Because Abby was a more theatrical persona, Tom's conflicts were internal, and you handled them extremely well and made them very clear to me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. One of the things that I found, and really similarly to Sasha's approach, actually, Aaron having given us a certain freedom, whenever you get cast in something, you try and sort of accumulate as much research as you can. And probably 1% of it ends up actually on the screen, but the rest of it is just sort of, I suppose, an education for yourself. But I tried to, similarly to Sasha, look at all sorts of things, whether it was reading books, but also some of the court sketches, getting an essence of who the guy was. And also, and what kind of came through was this extraordinary integrity. There's a beautiful passage that Jane Fonda, who he was married to later, she and his third wife, put together that with Troy Garrity, Tom's son, his memorial service. And she writes very beautifully about it on her website and describes that the day before he died, he whispered to her that seeing people who were willing to die for their beliefs had changed him forever. But at the same point, he understood that progressives had to be prepared to sort of take power and learn to govern, not just protest. And those ideas, which were all there and laid out in Aaron's script, were kind of what I suppose ultimately fueled my take on Tom, but also his rhetoric. Like, what I loved about him is he's not actually an extrovert, he's an introvert. And when you hear him speak, there's a kind of melody to his voice, but he's not, and it's quite compelling. But at the same point, he's not shouting out to you. He's kind of pulling you in. And I thought that was very different to Abby's take on things.
So before I question Jeremy about Jerry Rubin, let's show another clip right now.
Did you stand up?
It was a reflex.
He was respecting the institution.
I don't know what good it does to insult the judge, and it was in view of the jury and the press. And for Anna Schultz, who'll be recommending sentencing if we're convicted.
It's a revolution, Tom. We may have to hurt somebody's feelings.
So, we have this list. I was thinking maybe Monday morning we could read the names into the record as a way of saying...
As a way of saying what, Rennie?
That whatever we're facing, it's peanuts compared to what these guys...
He's the one who's going to sentence us. The judge gets to decide what we're facing. It is a goddamn trial.
Political trial.
No, we were arrested for... The law doesn't recognize political trials.
No, we weren't arrested. We were chosen.
So, Jeremy, you actually made Jerry Rubin more interesting than he was in real life to me. I was never as close to Jerry as I was to the others, and there was a spine to him that I didn't see in real life that I did see in your performance, and I wonder what you grabbed onto.
Interesting. Well, I mean, first of all, I think you grab onto Aaron's script. You know, I've heard Aaron talk about how he worships at the altar of intention and obstacle. And that gives you as an actor a really amazing kind of vector to be on. So you just have to hitch yourself to those forces that Aaron has already laid into the writing. And then you have to marry that with character. And so, you know, this was a really rich character to try and understand. You know, Jerry, as you know, wrote some pretty wild books. There's a lot of source material to look at. There's footage of him sort of misbehaving on all kinds of talk shows and, you know, being the kind of merry prankster that he was. But I think in terms of a backbone, I certainly felt, like Abbie Hoffman, that he was using tactics of guerrilla theater and humor as a way of expressing deep convictions and his dissent and his ideology. But I fell in love with the character and you know, unleashing those kind of forces in me of anarchy and merriment was a really kind of wonderful thing.
One thing that really surprised me was the how kind of crippled by affection he was with the undercover detective, Fitzgerald. I mean, who I adore anyway. But that scene was just great, where he was actually crushed and hurt. So, Yahya, obviously the genesis of today's protests in the street has to do with the murder of Black men and women at the hands of the police. And that's the germinating energy that has brought surprising numbers of Caucasian people and Latinos and Asians to join the Black community, because politics is a game of addition. Black people are 13% of the population. They need another 38% to get political power. And I'm wondering how you felt to be caught between those two periods of time. And if you felt it was the same problem, or you felt that there was a genesis and an evolution.
Well, I think similarly, I think when you look at the Vietnam War, when you look at, you know, and when you look at the reaction to the protest today, one of the similarities is the way that the public are able to consume the images, you know, just to consume that information. It was gross, it was gruesome, it was brutal, and it was most of all, it was undeniable, you know, to most people with a human, you know, with a real spine or a sense of integrity, you know, sense of humanity. You know, when I look at the murder of George Floyd, that propelled me out into the street, you know, because I had no choice but to be active, you know, and it was also very inspiring, you know, for me to see day after day, you know, on the streets of Los Angeles and sometimes West Hollywood. I'd go out and the streets were packed predominantly with people from other races, you know, that were out there saying Black Lives Matter, and that something needs to change. It's a common thread from the themes in our film in the 60s with, you know, you have a lot of people who are fed up with a certain, the specific way of the world, and deciding that, you know, that the right thing to do is to get out, put their passions forward, to take to the streets, and to make their voices heard. So I think, you know, those moments were definitely unifying causes throughout history.
I never knew until I saw the film, actually, that you were roped into the Chicago 7 trial, that you'd only spent 4 hours in Chicago. I never understood that. And I thought the film did a great job of making that particular manipulation clear.
Well, I think that was also very necessary to show, because you know, we know that Bobby was not there to incite riots, and that there was really no reason for him to be a part of this trial. In fact, he was very specific tool. As he would say, he was thrown in to make the group look scarier. And I think that's a detail that has to be acknowledged, because it goes on to add to the conversation of the history of the judgment and the discrimination against Black men, Black women, Black bodies in the judicial system. So Bobby's presence was actually weaponized against the entire group, just by the addition of that one black body amongst that larger group.
So, Aaron, you're introducing a whole new generation to this story. And as you usually do, even in the darkest characters or the darkest moments, you find a hidden side, a human side, or some kind of humor, and you didn't disappoint here. What are you hoping that young people take away from this?
Well, to begin with, I hope they recognize themselves. That I didn't want the movie to be an exercise in nostalgia or a history lesson. In making the film, we, the look and the sound of the film, we didn't lean into the 60s at all, into 60s iconography. And the score it's a film score. It's a contemporary orchestral score. Because I wanted to put as little between the events of 1968 and an audience in 2020 as possible. So I hope they recognize themselves. I hope they see the honor in protesting, the patriotism in protesting. That don't listen to the people who say this. To protest is anti-American. And of course, as I said before, we didn't need the film to suddenly become more relevant. We thought it was relevant when we were making it, but it did. You turn on the news now and you see terrible clashes between protesters and police. You see terrible polarization in the country. You see Black athletes, being demonized for peacefully protesting during the national anthem. You see an attorney general who's been politicized. And you know what else? Even that tension between Tom and Abby is very much reflected in the intramural battle you see on the left today, between the left and the further left, between the people who are saying that change has to be incremental and we have to work within the system, and people saying we're tired of incremental change and there needs to be a revolution. So I hope they see that. But before they can see any of that, the movie has to work as a movie. It has to still ultimately be faithful to the original reason that I was making it, which is I just thought, hey, this is a good story, and if we tell the story well, it'll be a good movie.
Well, it is a good movie. I come from a long line of Jewish communists and socialists who were involved in social protest forever. And one of the things that I've thought about watching both Black Lives Matter and back in my own day was that the police are employees. And if their bosses, the governors, the mayors, the boards of supervisors, gave the order, you can't shoot Black people any longer, we're going to prosecute you, it would stop. So the order obviously hasn't been given. And so the silence is what's interesting. And to me, the silence is a dog whistle to a hidden, sizable proportion of the population that is still afraid of Black people. And the silence says, we're not going to let them get you. And I'm afraid until that's exposed, not much is going to change. And I wonder what you think about that, both you and Yahya.
I'm eager to hear what Yahya has to say about this, but I'll be quick and say that I think you're 100% right about the silence, except now I think there's more than silence. I think that we have a leader who is emboldening people and who is essentially saying to fringe groups on the right, to white supremacists, you're my guys, you're my army, I'm counting on you. I think that these people who were plotting to kidnap and murder the governor of Michigan, I think that they believed they were doing God's work and Donald Trump's work. And I don't know why Trump and all the congressional and Senate Republicans don't stand up and say in a voice so clear as to be unmistakable, if you believe this, you're not with us, okay? If you believe this, that is un-American, and I'm not interested in your support.
So before I get your answer, Yahya, I don't want to press you up against our next clip. So let's watch the clip, and then I'll ask you for your response.
You know the Youth International Party as the Yippies. Their leaders are Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. Bobby Seale is the leader of the Black Panther Party. Now again, the defendants would tell you that these are three distinct groups, but they all...
Excuse me. Yes? May I speak?
No, sir.
He just said my name.
You're a defendant in this case. You're likely to hear your name.
I have a right to counsel, and His Honor knows that.
Don't tell the court what it does and does not know. Be seated. Mr. Schultz.
So, Yahya, I'd like to hear what you think about my thesis about the dog whistle of silence.
It's interesting that, you know, it makes me laugh because it's so fucking obvious. You know what I mean? And that's the first response is, yeah, that's absolutely correct, and that's how it goes. What I appreciate in this case is that I'm not the one in the group to say it, you know, and I think that that's an important that's an important thing, you know, because we've been saying that for if you go back in history, that's just, you know, that's what we've been saying. And so the next step is what I think I am beginning to see. I'm beginning to see people who do not look like me. I'm beginning to see white people say those things and have those conversations. White Americans have those conversations, and to stress the importance of having those uncomfortable conversations with their family members, with their in-laws, with their cousins, you know, with their coworkers, and so on and so forth. You know, I think and that's really when we're going to start to see some type of positive change, I believe. Or that's the only way that we're going to have to. That's the only way that we have a chance, you know, at that. I believe, because, you know, we've come to grips with that reality, you know, a long time ago.
You know, when I was born in 1941, growing up in the 40s, Jews were not white yet. I couldn't join the country club, couldn't go to school, certain things you couldn't do. And as Jews were allowed to become white, they broke off their relationships with the Black community, with whom they had been, at least my communist and socialist relatives, had been in great solidarity. And many of them just accepted white privilege and kind of went another way. And it's interesting to me to be reminded of Abby and Jerry and people coming back into the streets today. So I want to ask the actors now about Aaron. Just pretend he's not in the room. Usually, I always hated to work for writers who were directing the film, because they'd usually seen the film in their mind's eye and worked out every beat, and tended to be resistant to the contributions of actors, the surprises, the things that they didn't know. And so just starting with Sasha, I want to know, what was it like being directed by the writer?
Well, I'm used to that because when I make a film, I've written it, and, you know, often people present stuff that is better than you could ever have imagined. And, you know, Aaron, while being, you know, the most precise and, I believe, talented writer of the last, you know, 50 or so years, I mean, maybe even century, he allowed us to experiment. And that was within, it was a challenge for me because I'm obviously used to improvisational movies, but it was actually a challenge, but exciting to have a very clear framework within which you could play. And that framework was the script. And he was always ready to, give us different ways, even after he felt he had it perfectly. He very generously allowed us to try something completely different. And, seeing the final film, he was also generous enough to put them in the film. So I thought it was really inspiring because there's nothing more scary than being with a director who doesn't have a vision. Aaron has a very exact vision of what the movie is, where we are pacing wise, where we are within the structure, what the ultimate aim and meaning of and purpose of the movie is. But he allows the movie to be a living and breathing thing where it exists in the moment. So for me, it was the perfect balance actually between someone who's got vision and someone who's ready to throw it away if something better appears on the day.
So I'm going to ask each of the actors this same question. Can you think of one instance where the character spoke to you and took you in a slightly different direction than the script went?
Yeah, I can sort of speak to the moment where Bobby Seale, after he's bound and gagged and he walks out and he's brought out into the court and taken to his seat. There was, I don't recall any specific direction about that moment, but I know that based on the writing, based on the description of that moment, it was a very horrifying moment. And to me, when I work on a story, I try to help myself by saying that every good story is a love story, and that love story is about a thing or an idea or a person that one character is madly in love with, and then the plot of the story or the world around him is trying to take that, is trying desperately to take that away. And so then the character's job to defend that thing. Well, what I put into the story was Bobby's own dignity, Bob and Bobby's need to be seen as a human and to be strong and to protect his integrity and his dignity as a human being. And so in that moment, what the script told me, the script painted a harrowing picture of a man who was being brought into the courtroom bound, gagged, and chained, a Black man being brought into this courtroom bound, gagged, and chained. And on the page that took me in the direction of the horrific images or the horrific image of that moment. But thinking back to who Bobby Seale was, and all of his defiance and all of his pride, that led me to allow that moment to be a defiant moment, and to allow that moment to actually be a victory for Bobby Seale, in a moment where he could hold his head up high, because no matter what, his spirit wasn't going to be broken. Bobby says, when you're revolutionary, they break your spirit, and that was definitely a moment that I had to pocket, with myself in order to allow him the grace and the fortitude to be able to persist through that moment.
There was a close-up of Bobby Seale when he was gagged. The people were setting him down, and you turned 3/4 to the camera, and my feeling was that you were saying, "Are you seeing this?" I felt a definite intention coming from you, and I think it helped that also Aaron had Joseph Gordon-Levitt register his horror, however subliminally he did it. We got it. Jeremy, how did you feel working for the writer? And can you think of anything that you were moved to do differently than was presented? It's not really a fair question, but it's interesting.
Well, I mean, I love working for Aaron. I think, always with the director, I think there's a sort of healthy creative tension that you, on the one hand, I think as an actor, your job is to fight for your character, and the filmmaker's fighting for the overall canvas. Not that it's that clear a dichotomy, but in a sense, I feel that I'm there to serve Jerry. And so, Jerry, I think, would have felt straitjacketed by just about anything. So I was always trying to break out of whatever structure that I was in, and sort of be in contempt of court in a way, and channel his defiant spirit, through lots of pranks and dissent and so I guess I always had the impulse, I would say, to free myself from the strictures of the text while remaining faithful to the text. But that impulse for freedom and that impulse for dissent is very strong in when you're Jerry Rubin. He went before the House American Un-Activities Committee dressed as Santa Claus and dressed as an American Revolutionary soldier and handed out bubblegum to the House. So he's certainly not someone who's going to sit there and go go gentle into that good night. But I'm so moved by what you just said, and that was so evident in your work in that scene. And I certainly felt like that what we got from you in that moment, which made it so much more powerful, not harrowing, was dignity, and it's such a beautiful moment in the film.
Oh, appreciate that.
There's no doubt about it.
Eddie, you get to wrap it up. The last word on Aaron Sorkin. And
I suppose my thing is what
easy.
Project was one of those extraordinary things about what you learn about working for your heroes. And there's an odd thing by which I've sort of spoken about before, but I'm not a dreamer. I don't really have a bucket list, and Aaron was one of the only, if only, person on that bucket list. So when I was sent the script, I'd said yes to the project before I'd even read the thing, and I then read it, and I was sort of blown away by it. But as I began to research Tom, there was suddenly this moment in which you go, okay, so you're working for someone you admire so much, and you think the piece that he's created is so beautiful, and it's orchestral in the way that it's all woven, and I always think of it as it's like sort of jazz meets punk meets classic. It's all these kind of things coming together. But at the same point, there was an element of Tom, because he was very straight-laced in the way that in order to contrast with Sacha's Abby, it was like, can you ask this person you admire hugely for things? And for example, just to add a little bit of humor to some of Tom's, and Aaron was, or to write the interim scenes. I did one of the most humiliating things in the world, Peter, which was the scene in which Mark Rylance as Kunstler cross-examines Hayden. It plays through moments of flashback. Now, as an actor, when you're prepping that, you have to kind of imagine what is said in the room between those bits of flashback. And I'm sitting there, having not met Aaron, but going, I need to work out what is said in those bits, but I can't ask Aaron Sorkin to write those bits for me. So shall I write them myself? So I took a stab at writing them myself. And then I sent this really humiliating email to Aaron going, hey, Aaron, that's the most British email you've ever seen in your life. It's Eddie here. I just wondered what happened in between in these flashback bits. I know you're already busy, and I'm sure you wouldn't have time to do it. So I've taken a stab myself, but please don't be offended. And I sent this email to Aaron. And he sent a sort of one-liner back saying, thanks for this. And yeah, it's along the right lines. I'll take a stab at it myself. And he allowed that stuff. He allowed Morgan to play that scene, the scene that he then wrote for us, even though it cuts back to the flashbacks as was in the script. And it was just one of those great things in life where you work for someone whose work you adore, who you adore when you meet them, but you do kind of admire greatly. And it's as fulfilling and as wonderful as you could possibly have hoped it could be. And he's sitting there in front of me, and now that's really embarrassing. But there you go.
Well, you know, I could keep this conversation going forever, but we promised we would end it. So I want to thank Eddie Redmayne and Sacha Baron and Yaya and Jeremy Strong and Aaron. I want to congratulate them again for
Working
winning.
with these guys was the privilege of a lifetime. I'll end there.
So there you have it. I want to congratulate you for winning the Ensemble Award and remind Mill Valley how lucky you are to be seeing this film. Good night, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.